like the study grammar like the scenario to be that black using like black box like pulling with like covering like the covering and then the picture right with that like the effect and that way like here like pulling instantly pulling like no towards that black shield and basically instantly straight away like taking like no at that point. And at that point, like being in like any more like kind of like state looking like the part of like the black box and pushing like looking out at them and like that will straight away like taking off like like they also spinning away that was so it's like looking out that and straight away at that point so like losing off the spouse and like there's just a single attack like the be ensuring to like put that much of like strength into that next effect of that backward so as to that basically not take out the that will not do that and so like that next attack of that backward and only probably getting that injured and like seems to be getting into that and absolutely quickly and try that kind of state like within after that and so at that point itself like I'm considering like black will be sitting absolutely more confident and basically will be laughing like he must take laugh and basically straight away Blackbeard will be telling this Orphan like the number to like get today from like the ship is like looking at that and that way putting these from like the ship and Blackbeard will be selling putting to like and the Liam is different by then like all of the remaining team members of Blackbeard would have currently also indicated on like lost that so members of like looking at it that and either that or like due to like no being in this like badly repeated state like like no effect and that we are being right standing right in front of law that can be solely due to like the other concern towards like the captain like and like them not being able to like even attempt at like attacking Blackbeard at that point like the scenario that so like that way like should be being brought towards like Blackbeard and basically that point like black here but black so with that smile like I think choosing to like totally straight away like take out like the entire piece of like the memory reel of black law like looking at that and the so like that way to that not only find like the location of like the phonic that like the law knows so far or phonic that like law knows so far but also doing that leave law into like an absolute empty memory kind of like state uh, would be along the lines of like the villanistic intent of like black data that point like the scenario that was so like that way that one self and like putting only standing by her stand and basically to refuse to that to listen to that black is like the scenario that was but like at that point self something like the black straight away like bringing out this like the from a big power and founders like one of the founders like Harman basically would be bring that close to like putting the intensity of that power close to that putting and at that point I'm just like putting the very same putting that getting care and integrated and like getting totally that way in an extremely elections manner like getting to like, listening to that like the orders and basically putting at that point would be putting out like entirety of like the real memory rate of like dot like might and like putting would be taking off the resource and basically as like putting would be about to like the dance rate that's entirety of like dot like memory rate at that very last second, I'm just like the unexpected footstep and scenario happening with like straight away like an intensity powerful attack like landing on like black letter that way like the scenario that I'm in such an absolutely unexpected manner like the scenario that I'm going and that single attack is that like badly indirect black jet and black jet straight away falling and like I getting badly injured by the single attack is like scenario that I'm so like at that point like putting being absolutely shocked and basically putting like looking uh, quite turning back and like at that point like the big to getting that absolute like shocking surprise of like basically after seeing like the big non-pirates like almost uh, like having made it to like that exact island was like the scenario that I'm looking and like on like the very front of like the big non-pirates ship like I'm looking like it would be big knock with like a wide smile like basically standing in like the very front and it would have been like big knock that would have like launched that attacking like black Bear at that point. Which would have badly injured Black Bear was like the scenario that and so like at that being such an absolute extremely shocking and extremely unexpected surprise for like putting on might out by then. And at that point might out definitely been feeling absolutely something that like a big mom in that like kind of selfish definitely not all even bother to come to like even attempt to like even bother to like attempt to like sort of to putting would be along the lines like putting my W until that point. Just like the scenario that I'm so like that being such an unexpected and shocking pleasant surprise for like putting and like at that point like all of like putting like fears towards like to be easily like vanishing and we at that point second becoming like to think straight away like running towards like the bad danger and falling like here and basically putting to be snatching away like the double stroke of like law from like like farm and basically quickly putting running towards like law and basically giving those like also back to like the badly injured and sideline law was like the scenario and those straight away not wasting any time and quickly quitting and basically like getting back to like power like at that chance like the scenario that I'm able to and like definitely like one for example like the moment like just like attack from like with not landing on like that with like unnecessary attack would be landing on like at that point itself I was like taking it straight away and I'm totally bring that happening exactly at like the point where like the deck would be taking off for the and would be about to like like then that of like low like the scenario that but like right before detaching like totally prepared for like all this like happen and straight away like the first thing putting would be doing would be straight away like quickly like giving law putting all that and that you have like that memory rate of that law back to where it belongs to that law might is like straight away it's like the scenario that then putting quickly like taking back like the scope of law and giving it back to like law like the scenario that from like and give it back to like law like the scenario that I'm able to do. But like for a thing like by the time that putting would out like pulled out like that memory and that like that memory real of like law like and like at that point even though like the confident like it would have not seen it like sitting would have really seen like the exact location from like law memory real like the exact location of like all three uh, of like the two other corners that like knows that like location that like knows of like the one that so as well so one was like it's like the scenario that I'm looking for with me and the young unforgivable the scripture so like such a scenario of like the big empire like but they did it like showing up solely to that rescue sitting alone. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at like that event happening solely due to that sheer absolute change in like the mindset of that stigma totally happening through like an athlete pairing and whole speech like category. It's like the scenario that I'm looking over right? Because like nothing else from that once like the British virus would be making it that because like nothing else mentioned that like the putting myself actually not so left with like the demon virus to like one of and the prevention for like maybe for like just to be like a traitor in like the demon virus itself or like within like Fortnite and like that to be a single individual creator that you might have use like the tendency and might have leave the crucial information about like to the black here about like the Pigment virus that basically leaving without by leaving okay kind of and chasing after like just and heading off to that one while putting along was like left behind as like I'd like to okay and like this crucial information like the fact that like even way back then while so had to had like left to one after like on their return from that okay and like basically the fact that like that they knew of all that might have been most likely through the that they communicated by one of like the traitors that like they were fire or like and like okay kind of through the London that might be how like even back then like back then was like too late even while being present all the way at like full island of that been known for this might have been actually the name of the like a possible variable for it. So that that way that it might have been like a conscious decision by like here who might have been like essentially well and fully aware that like putting alone was like person at like okay calendar at that point and they totally like taking that as your advantage of that exact situation of like the absence of technical but like the whole guidance to slightly target like that putting and to that capture footage might have been expected especially might be the impression and that might have been what happened is the minimum pyramid. So go to Liam was like the remote for example like the one in like one of the like constant movement pyramid it might have living category that is like mercy power that vector about that like you might have saved and prevented like Sigma from like landing on like the volcano. Might have been what might have happened, and that might have been category that might have saved Sigma. Might have been the case spending on the solution. Even at that point, like Sigma might have been justified defeat against like the world generation and making excuse chances to sort of like defeat against like the world generation. Uh, by saying things along the lines of to Sigma Fighter like she had gone easy on them along this line that Sigma made, but it might have made such excuses for the entirety of that return journey all the way back to that Forte Island might have been like it the film of the so like reaching Forte Island like I'm putting like only at that point might have been when like the Big Bang might have even found out about like this like affection of like um by the black people. So like at that point from the like category genuinely have like that absolute fixed for the question like he might have actually been genuinely concerned for like today as like the brother that and like it might have definitely not have to do with like putting like the level to powers of like putting the units or anything like definitely solely category as like a brother might have been concerned genuinely feeling that absolute concern about this like it's putting might have been like so like category might have expressed this like concern to like Big Mom and might have straight away told Big Mom that like we should just straight away like the Big Mom parents to straight away like that should find like the backward fires and like they uh would it would be along the lines like category might have told Big Mom and at that point like Big Mom might have straight away brushed that aside by like Big Mom might have totally told category in an intuitive manner might have told category something around the lines of like fitting and like fitting that levels of powers are like relevant to that the bigger part will be along the lines like Big Mom might have casually told category at that point like scenario where which might have totally been like the last straw of like category and might have given like the courage to like category to that finally speak up against that stigma in like there and bold man of might have been what might have happened and like category might have made that bold piece and might have like called stigma out on her cricket against like the world generation and basically uh, being due to like like or confident as well as like that selfishness and or confident and basically not sticking together with like the family and not fighting as like the big monk pirates and like big monk like fighting all along in like the war environment have been what resulted in like big monk the police by like the generation might be along the lines of the like category from the might have at that point for big monk might have been like city, like the importance of like family sticking together like and fighting together at the like that absolute thing like and the different like through that speech like their speech like categories might have been able to uh make people realize like the scenario that I'm looking like so definitely straight away that what even if it's through shock like I'm like people might have had that realization at that point might have been what might have happened simply month so like straight away like I'm looking like first thing that might have that might have been might have let us straight away create husband or ex-husband. I think that it is like totally traveling like this like location and Fox location is like okay, and like the first thing Big Mom might have done might have been that Big Mom might have totally freed him and might have maybe even told sorry to that let go of his ego and might have even told that sorry to that person who's like person are that I'm looking for the time. So like I'm a person like I'm Navy along with like big more that big father as well might be so different Navy then showing up along with like big more in like the big more staff along with like when that the big more big more like showing up to like showing up to this like exact island where like a fight between like and like that is taking place on like the big more ship just like the scenario that I'm so like this being how uh, like the virus like eventually ending up showing up to with that absolute definite intent and determination that definitely save that family man to be like the scenario that I'm just about setting and my end. So when the furniture of the singer putting while going through like the memory of like control recording like putting not only finding out like the location of like the two other whole point of it, but like putting also properly finding out having that absolute realization of that absolute bond of that friendship between that law and like this project all the hardship that like the law and this project could have uh, like gone through that together with that absolute teamwork in like the and face in like the recent years and everything that I'm probably putting that while going through that memory rate up and down that when pudding would be talking finding out that food now that I'm probably everything and definitely at that point like pudding definitely as solutions like law student somebody like this one have to on their journey to that project and like definitely I'm just putting that which coming as like such an absolute talking surprise to that pudding. So it's like the scenario that I'm doing and at that point if I'm doing that pudding totally feeling that absolute uh closeness and like a feeling of closeness and like soft corner towards like law at that point, like putting in that one, like putting compare to the making the appointment, making the emphasis. Like at that point, like I'm totally putting like fixing such high, an extremely high priority for like putting that definitely ensure that like the big vampire uh, don't like and don't like no it's like hard fire, it's like with another that so like I'm just pretty much like the big vampire would be showing up like I'm just putting that um I'm totally putting at that point like putting like first of all having the shocking surprise of like witnessing like an experience in this like never before experience like genuine affection and like love film that at that point would be showering on like putting at that point just like scenario that that is also getting putting like seriously emotional and like actually putting yet like also we only taking advantage of all of that by probably at that point like line to like signal about like basically the whole situation of like the black by line and putting at that point line to like the signal and that affected them by telling them that basically it was like a law and the hard fire that were like probably the black paper were like trying to like putting and like it was like low and like the hard fire that were that probably their lives to that would be save to protect us would be along the lines of the government putting probably at that point like making that absolutely like and law and that you can have at that point in the public shop by hearing that like putting it like the scenario that I'm so like yeah like then that if it's a big number to be straight away believing that even though category alone would be able to like sense that basically putting it like yet like I'm thinking definitely category should be definitely like that absolutely uh, confident in like putting like sense of judgment and everything. So like category totally not revealing the truth and like totally going with like that flow like with another that way like the big number is like totally taking out that happening with the new mindset of like big mom and like the big mom virus. Definitely I'm bring like category speech like not only changing like the mindset of like the number like that keeps happening not like the entire repetitive versus like scenario that I'm looking and that totally was changing like the mindset of like the entire of like the human bias and bringing about a lot more of that closeness in their bond and like it's like the scenario that I'm looking so like that way at that point like I'm one like coding is making the feel like about like the backyard pirates like including like the hard pirates like really having tried to like attempted to like protect putting like at that point I was like constantly the big one pirates feeling that absolute towards like the hard pirates as well like having that absolute race happening even more towards like the backyard pirates which like the main pirates at that point would be itself like unleashing onto like the backyard pirates that point. So it's like another that I'm is which isn't like the entirety of like the Black Paris at present. It's not present at that location of like that island. Like luckily able to bring like the Union back like easily destroying like the entirety of the current like set of like the Black Paris members present at that island with like personality that I'm looking for. So like that way like I'm talking about for like the Black Widow as well as like the members of like Black Widow like suddenly getting badly injured and thoroughly defeated, and like basically the vampire is like really helping Law and Source out as well. Is like the scenario that I'm the only for it, and by the very emotion. From the manipulation from the only like Law might be like the only doctor in like Law like hardware maybe like a certain restoration. Yet like at that point like I'm looking like by the time like the vampire will be visiting like the like like Law would be totally thoroughly exhausted and badly injured state. So like definitely I'm totally putting like it's solely like putting like I'm putting like the big numbers like straight away like sending their having their not home member like pretty like not just low but like the entirety of like the like the scenario that and that way like the big numbers like helping like the hardware and like that such a bond solely through putting like being formed between like the big numbers towards like the hardware and like the scenario that I'm saying like no at that point we'll be getting absolutely extremely interested towards like putting and definitely pudding would be like before leaving pudding would be drinking as like low and like most likely maybe pudding telling law to like really convey her regards to like the product to like the next time law me like the product to get along the lines on the like to the like with like a wing like show me wing to like law and basically telling like secretly telling law they don't like really it's like the scenario that I'm to talk about and make it to the that point I'm to bring like feeling maybe even feeling like frustrated because like law would be definitely like law having that side of like that competitive side towards like Luffy and kid like I'm totally getting so definitely like solely into that factor alone like law feeling a bit of frustration while law will be at that point according to the depression having that realization that like it was still to like the like law and law like past allegiance with like the so alone to claim the scholarship alone that basically like in such a critical situation like putting help out that basically so that way like the body feeling at that point in which one after that realization we actually feeling that in-depth feelings towards like the profit through uh like which will be most likely kind of like to a certain extent will be frustrating for like this is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like definitely would be frustrated to like definitely like the future like basically somehow to like repay that depth towards like the product course so that like basically local like is doing even just like Luffy and this product so that to be like to a certain extent to be a priority of like a feeling for like with it at that the point to like the unique scenario that I was about which I'm going to rate. So like the feeling potential right now is like for like wanting to that actually get that feels just like the lack of that for my like positive stuff. But like on the other hand, like Luffy, definitely like even though Luffy injured, like Luffy definitely will be still having a lot of power within him. That like Luffy would be able to like unleash and basically still would be able to like get away from like the possibilities that we are like from like Luffy not unleashing that power. Like within our consciously deciding not to like unleash that power, especially with like already Luffy having heard like that revelation about like recognizing like having like 500 years like being like ahead of like futuristic technology. So like definitely Luffy might want to like keep this like growth spring like movie here from like where it comes until it's like until Luffy feels like he's in like he's like until like Luffy actually gets like the along the lines that Luffy will be hearing and basically Luffy might be also think that basically for to be the for him to like not train out his like actual throw stamina by using like actual rope powers rather than doing that like the thing of like saving like stamina by not using it like rope powers and saving it all for like that eventual confrontation against like welcome to the announcement like using will be feeling and preparing like the scenario that I'm looking. So like solely due to that fact like I'm totally putting for like scenario to do that like that right like the room like first booster like I'm feeling like even though Bonney genuinely will be getting seriously looking will be injured and will be able to like walk like and like maybe on the other hand like getting injured only to a certain extent. And it's that point I'm looking like stop almost like they turning the just into its like similar tennis like form and basically like carrying like the injured body as well as like pushing and trying to like escape while like it will be Jinbe that will be like trying to like stop like the Pacific Star and basically so that like Chopper uh, could like escape from like the star. So the along the line, Jinbe would be again like Jinbe probably unleashing a bunch of like attacks against like the Pacific Star. Yet like I'm referring like that, but Star being stronger than like Jinbe would be expecting. It's like the scenario that and more advanced than like Jinbe would be expecting that like in that that Kuma like was ending up like unexpectedly using some sort of like an attack which would be most likely trapping putting Jinbe into like a trap kind of like escape from which like Jinbe won't be able to like escape like scenario that like at that point like Chopper along with like Chopper would be running with like by carrying like Danger Boy as well as like Luffy as well quickly getting chased down by like the Roma like person with that and like the Roma like person like easily offering Chopper and basically also getting Chopper as well in like into like kind of like state using like some sort of willpower of like the Roma like person like it's an art that and like the Roma like person does straight away that bringing that both Jinbe as well as like the lake of that Luffy Bonney as well as like Chopper overlap of like the number one among like the multiple satellites of that person, like the number one satellite, which might be that the weakest in actuality in like strength, especially my very ambitious. So especially like to this lab like brain will be where like just like Kuma was like perfect stuff will be bringing like the innocent Jinbe and like Luffy and Chopper and like boy at that point was towards this like the scenario that was all the kind of potential right. So for the man and the film totally bring like of like an eventual rescue of like shooting by like the big vampire like totally bring like on the way back like like from that point like I'm something like putting with the so screen there will be excited by this like absolute like change in like the mindset of like film that like I'm putting like film at that point it's like on the way back to be giving them that unexpected shocking pleasant surprise of that basically leading to them about like the location of that the two God chronicles at like so as well as like at like one is like the winter scenario that episode only like and it's ready. So that's the name of the episode right now. Definitely for like and I'm like so for like the features the land of the building right now. Sending Bonnie to that return them back to like their husbands and to their person age. But like at that point I'm considering like Jinbe to let him appear and like stop them and basically Jinbe telling Bonnie to that instead of like turning Lucy as well as like back to the original age to that it was shown that like to turn them into around like the very exact same age. Jinbe is in like the young age that Jinbe is in at present like maybe so that like maybe they could like only like so that like stealth would be that they will just favor especially since like movie at present like even being like one of like them of the scene and having all that popularity like having all that fame like definitely it would be better if like basically weapons if like weapons is not able to like recognize them that would be uh making things that much more like beneficial for them in like the long run to that goal and attempt to like get to that very from with that absolute step to get them line something like of frankly that Jinbe would be telling Bonnie and that way like I'm different like so like the majority of like the of like the exercises are like I'm probably putting for like along with like Jinbe like Luffy as well as like Chopper as well as like Bonnie pushing through that while them all being like the very exact age that like Bonnie had changed in this age to at present is like the winter scenario that I'm looking for in the things. And that I'm looking for like an Indian scenario where like almost by the time that they do them making it towards like where from like I could do that. But they almost making it to like where from like that most likely easily recognizing that actually able to like figure out like that strategy and this move that in that way like simply straight away primarily targeting that Bonnie and like capturing any person. So if I'm putting Bonnie into like an emotional kind of state, that way like I'm Python like that first pro has through that of like Jinbei Chopper as well as like Luffy that way getting trapped in their even younger age is like the scenario that I'm developing and like them having absolutely and definitely due to that age change like I'm like that's not being able to that fight at their full potential level like the scenario that I'm developing that way like them being forced to like escape from like right from that location and definitely like them is that having to like figure out the stealthy strategy also would get on plans Jinbe would be at that point telling to like Luffy and so much to like stealthy somehow for them to like manage to like make it towards like the location of like make it towards like Princess and Bonnie and basically to free Bonnie and that way to like prove Bonnie for them to like be able to like regain back the original self like the original case and that being like the only way they would be able to like bring down their product. So it's like kind of like an eventual switch up situation that can just like them engineering up in a second scenario that I'm putting I'm up for instance right now. So like the name of the instance right now it's like we saw the kingdom at present might be one among the neighbors like I like to that the world government but that might have not been like the case in that system path while Kuma was also holding on as like the king of like solid so which kingdom might have been like that difficult to just so like in that system path like in like Kuma even since way back then like Kuma might have been such an absolutely empathetic uh, uh, and caring king of like Soviet kingdom that whom like the citizens of like Soviet kingdom might have raised as like the best king and everything might have been like the beginning of them. So uh, that as like the king in like the word as the might have been like a case that might have been love that King Koma and like got because Black Bonney might have been like a case that like a compliment permission like King Koma back then he might have been so extremely caring and sympathetic towards like citizens like and like might have even back then like know well about like the extreme villains of like the central dragon generation. So that this might have been like and like he might have had he might have had that dislike towards like the dragons and might have not wanted anything to do with like the just like a precious property the will not have anything to do at all with like the central dragons or like the world down and like it should be along the lines of the that might have totally fixed in his mind, and that way, like, like the sort of kingdom might have been back and like while under like the role in Roma might have been one of the many nations that were not allied to like the world or might have been like the minimum revenue. So like definitely like might have been like like the great number of cells to dragons like there might be like a certain number of cells to dragons might be having like the hobby of like basically targeting nations like not allied to like specifically targeting nations that don't allied to like the world online. And that way like one of the like festive like might have shown up to uh so in the might have been like the basic of human experience. So like the sensitive dragon might was like sensitive dragon might have just met with like King Puma and like definitely at that point like I'm like even though King Puma might have on in like the like sensitive dragon even though King Puma deep down might have had like that like still King Puma might have the absolutely put on that absolute fake and might have done the absolute that's to that trait with sensitive dragon solely out of that absolute fear that and getting confirmed that that King Puma might have had towards this like people. The last thing Uma might have wanted might have been to like upset like an upset side Puma side to like cause like the sister dragon to like of because suffering to like this people. Thinking like the last thing might have been like the last thinking going on might have wanted like King Puma might have treated that self dragon. I might have done separate just to like please like the self dragon, but like I'm looking at the box that only like the self dragon might have made with that extreme demand, which might have been like offering to like the self dragon of like full sum of money might have been like the minimum threat. So that might have that might have been like that demand of success self dragon might have been like such a full sum of that money that basically that thinking of might have had might have that basically that in order to that basically meet the conditions of like the requirement of like the sense requiring like people might have been in like a situation where like you might have had to like basically give up all the money that that might have been in like simply not possible in his like might have been like the minimum for ambition. So like so that kingdom like might have been not that much of like might have been to a certain extent like a foreign kingdom yet like I'm reflecting to even with all those like limitations like Induma might have back then like that would that's to like meet the needs of like his like and taking care of his like systems of his like kingdom might have been like great like then and that way like even though with that struggle still might have loved Induma so much back then might have been like the tables but even like that way this happens this high demand of like some of money of like offering by itself so like Induma might have uh, without hesitation that might have straight away given up all the money, all of that thing Thomas that happened. And that and that way like the sensitive dragons, like should really sensitive dragons might have the realistic might the realistic laugh might have totally left sort of in the might have been like the case in the universe for interest. So at that point like might have not been like the entire peak of like the wealth of like King Puma, but like it might have been that still like the majority of the wealth of that King Puma that King Puma back then might have had to like give up. So this is like realistic system, right? So like actually Kintoma at least still even that when Kintoma from using like the majority of the black belt and like at that point might have been facing that reality of like the situation of like that Kintoma had to like take care of his like had to like struggle to like take care of his like family had to like struggle for money to like take care of his like family might have been like the situation for the Kintoma at that point. Yet like Kintoma at that point might have been absolutely pleased and happy that he still even so still he was able to like save all of the black people from that and his like black killers who tells the dragon might be along the lines like what King Kona might have been innocently probably pleased and might have been probably uh, thinking and hoping for like like for like just never be returned by that victim culture like or like any such like in a particular my garam the like independent king Kuma might have so definitely the prayer like king Kuma might have probably while stepping out of his like kingdom and like making his like systems and everything like king Kuma might have to around that absolute fake activity like as a black lady as like this like use as like made a pretend to be just like people felt with like thinking of like well and like comfort lifestyle and everything. But like definitely that Mama might have only on that fake acting and like that they might have all of that like difference into that singing that it made think master like totally fine and that and living that as comfort and everything might be along the lines that like what might have happened to implement in the school. Like that way, even though Thinkuma might have started like and the different like Thinkuma and the different like might have like in order to like take care of like family assessment, like Thinkuma might have totally like just put on the disguise and basically as like this like new citizen to like solve the kingdom and basically Thinkuma that way like while putting on that absolute disguise like all the citizens might have work in actually work among like the like citizens found work and like make a work alongside with like citizens in like the kingdom and that way like might have what I had to like earn money each day for like to take care of like income of like we might have been material so definitely it was such a disguise try to like income even through such a struggle like might have taken care of them point and kingdom of like white husband might have been like this the human realistic yeah like the like even though Bonney might have not made a few of it like still like Bonney might have been extremely disappointed with it because of that not being able to get any more of that all those like absolute great food and like shows that great quantity of like food that she were that like Bonnie was like totally used to in like the past like Bonnie all of the like losing all of that like might have of that absolute disappointment within like Bonnie. Yeah, like I'm remembering like Bonnie might have still listened to that woman might have been like the case the human television. That way like I'm like the citizens that have still might have not found out about like Thomas Pickett might have been what like others that we don't so definitely that way like I'm looking that after a while like I'm up to like maybe a few years like I'm the sense if I can might have once again realistic person this exact very same realistic situation if I can might have return back to like this very same uh to this like very same sort of thing of that and like Kuma might have seen like this like shit of it, like the self dragon showing up and like the self dragon like getting out of like the ship. While Kuma might have been working as like working among this like people with this like okay, so like Kuma might have told like this like to be a control of like an excuse to like leave the work temporarily and basically Kuma might have ran towards like this like so that assistant might have ran back and might have ended like to enter back to like in the to quickly create like that realistic sense of like that like I'm looking like in that for tension like Uma might have okay somewhat to like take off to like the text might have been like a case you know forever so like the benefits of the like I'm looking like the kingdom seeing this like uh person and like he might have not have recognized like Shima might have been like the case and like like at that point, like this perspective guys might have been like totally covered in like sweat from all the work and everything. So definitely at that point straight away that the winner six sets the dragon might have straight away that might have it's like the person like that so springs up from like the self dragon might have only said was instantly felt was like unfitting to the authentic of that kingdom and like the dragon might have quickly pulled out such like weapon. And at that point I'm with like Kuma that quickly might have realized about this like this guy and basically quickly might have removed like this guy and basically that and point might be only at that point that the villain system like might have realized that it was Kuma and like, instantly like the villain but villain system like might have laughed at like Kuma because like absolute villanistic laugh like mocking Kuma poor Kuma is like the scenario that everything and like definitely this time like in that Bonnie might have definitely been stealthy by on this like on the difference between like this like and Kuma might have been like the case so like Bonnie at that point might have been feeling absolutely enraged. Might have been like the case, definitely not enraged, and definitely the enraged Bonnie might have been about to like step into that room and shout at like that said the dragon, but like as like Bonney was about to step into that room, like and just like Kuma might have definitely noted that the angry Bonney, and like Kuma might have straight away like seriously like in a serious manner might have like so it's like ice might have given Bonney that signal that like she does not end up that about so like scenario that happens. So like that way in an extended manner like Bonney might have stayed out and basically might have kept on spying at the conversation might have been like the case that Milan created. So definitely at that point, like like the villain itself, like once again might have demanded for like another offer for him, and like this time it might have been like even more great, like sum of money than like just like previous offer might have been like the case definitely not the invasion. Well, like Tuma might have been only hesitant to make an excuse, she have like wasn't like anger like the dragon and like basically, yeah, like Toma might have had like absolutely no idea as to like how to make that much of like a huge sum of money for like for such a like so like Toma might have made like might have told like such like that like he would pay in turn like to a certain extent of that money that certain obviously the remaining like remaining of like the money not like a few years maybe along the line like Toma might have like requested to like Prince Dragon, which might have instantly angered like Prince Dragon, and like the Prince Dragon straight away might have told Puma that was the if he doesn't pay that money by this like certain date that the Prince Dragon might have told Puma, then like this might be close by that, then like the Prince Dragon would be like uh once again showing up to like the the kingdom and will be like making up for like the remaining one by making like Puma's like family up like a bunch of like citizens like open up for like the dragon maybe along the lines of that correct like and boy like the picture dragon might have made that Puma might have been working at happening settlement so like that way like at that point I'm talking what and like the future like might have been like the base but you know right so like Puma at that point might have been absolutely surprised and able to like up like the future dragon might have like Bonnie might have told straight away like being innocently telling Puma that like that he has to like only that like fight like versus the dragon and basically that like Puma doesn't have to like listen to this the dragon and like that like Puma along with like the army of like the Soviet kingdom will be able to like defeat like the dragon might be along the lines like innocently like Bonnie might have told particularly told Puma but like but like Puma like knowing like the true extent of like the South the dragon who is like able to definitely might have attempted to like make Donald realize that that's not possible. Like you cannot current is those and definitely what Puma might have done, King Puma might have done next might have been definitely he might have enforced like offering this like new role of like basically like a few offering to like for all the workers in like the poor kingdom of like the kingdom which might have been like he might have enforced this like new role of like basically the workers like from their earning time to like make this like free offering to like King Soma like the scenario that I'm looking for like that as well and that itself might have stopped like might have been so unbelievable for like the citizens of like of the kingdom and basically like them at that point like the citizens of like Soviet kingdom might have definitely not have been able to agree to that because of like them as well having families that they have to take care of and basically like with that is offering to like King Roma like they won't be having like much at all like take care of their family might have been like situation for like situation of like of that sort of thing. So like King Roma might have relied on like the of like Soviet kingdom to like enforce that like offering towards like King Roma or with that absolute words of like King Roma to definitely keep like the citizens and his like family protected from like the women's from like the captivity of like the business with the party might have been like the implement so like that way like King Roma that way like citizens of like the Soviet system might have instantly and quickly might have gone from like rating King Roma as like the best king in like the in that world to like basically them suddenly disliking King Roma and basically like starting to like three of them as like the worst king in like the world of like in our that I'm today. So like on top of look like I'm like King Kuma might have also broken the law and basically might have done like other uh, like stuff against like fellow like to for like offers against for like the dragon might have been like a supplement and that way if they on the day of like the dragon like deadline that the dragon that might have been shot and basically on that day that can look for like Kuma might have just barely managed to like meet like the exact sum of like the remaining on that of like the exact sum of money that Kuma has to like pay to that person dragon on that exact day, just almost around that exact time as like even after like suspension, dragon might have showed up that and like might have then showed up to like the kingdom of Kuma that and even at that point like Kuma that all some of money might have not been met and like Kuma the second like probably might have all that absolute fake acting in front of like potential dragon that doing it like as well as to like these potential dragon and distract like potential dragon from like and so that way like to stall time until like potential dragon will be asking for that the money and like that might have been what had happened supplement for it. And that way like by the time the dragon are usually asked to for like the super like the money like and might have been just at that very second it's like basically Puma might have finally managed to like gather like the remaining uh, like whatever little money that was like left to meet that requirement of like government one might have been given minimum commission like Puma might have hand over that money to like that Silver Wagon and like the Silver Wagon might have once again left that villain stick left and like Puma and might have been like the case minimum commission but like I'm just randomly uh, on that after like the Sister Dragon might have left that on that very day itself I can think that definitely the citizens might have finally ended up being fed up of like the king's and black activities black against like the of color black him. So they the citizens might have when the citizens of black something come by that they might have strongly felt that really like the once the Lord like kingdom had gotten so extremely greedy that basically that like he was like only on top of that like this new role of like bring build some of like an offerings that they have to like pay and like sitting struggling to like take care of the family like Tinkuma was also like showing all those like activities against like the law as well. Would be along the lines like I'm sorry, like the citizens maybe might have found out on that very day, Stephanie. So like that way on that very day, once like citizens like left on that day from like of the kingdom on that very day itself, like this absolute reward might have been started by the citizens of like of the kingdom against like the kingdom it's like the scenario that happens. And that way like I'm like kingdom and it's like family might have uh struggled and might have adapted in a so quick like for flee and escape from that sort of the kingdom. While they might have been shaped by been shaped by like the citizens of like the sort of the kingdom itself whom Roma through all the might have been spread their mind to like perfectness and that time might have been the minimum generation. So definitely that way that I'm only running like while trying to like get away like think Roma that wife might have got captured and this that way like I'm like what in Roma as well as Bonney might have lost the wife and like might have been what might have happened especially might have been one thing. So yeah, like thinking of like priority at that point might have been definitely to ensure that like Bonnie doesn't get captured by like the rebellion, by the revolt, by the Supreme Court, like the look that Bintuma might have definitely barely managed to like escape from like sort of kingdom just like Bonnie, but like I'm thinking that Newton's like but they might have also been chased by like existence to that before time that might have also the like Sintoma like attempts to like save Bonnie might have made himself turned himself into like that big distraction for like the huge revolt army within like the kingdom and basically that way like to Roma like basically guessing like that and like doing that activity for this function like and like Roma manages like be safe spawning from like topic in the might have been like it is implemented so like luckily might have been like Roma might have gotten like spawned to the boat and might have Bonnie might have had to like say proceed by herself might have been the case and like Roma as well might have been or being able to like do it was like question because 5G like Kuma might have not been able to like get onto like that very close, but like Bonney might have been like certainly not very much. So doubly that way through Kuma like practice 5G, I thought like Kuma might have suddenly gotten into another scope or like and might have escaped from like sort of in the or like Kuma might have like ran to the beaches and might have really swam away from like sort of in the might have been what might have happened and like in between like and like Kuma might have gotten she might have gotten rocked and then like Kuma might have been struggling and like dragon might have really spotted like Kuma and like dragon might have not at all recognized Kuma and yeah like dragon might have definitely straight away uh, offered that help and might have saved Kuma and that way might have been how Kuma might have ended up in like the revolutionary army might have been or might have happened to be no correction. But in like Bonnie's case, like Bonnie while owning like the boat like might have totally ended up like the situation where like the boat ended up crashing and like Bonnie ending up watching a show on like some specific item where like fire proof might have been present especially might have been so that way like this like fire proof might have found Bonnie and I'm different like suddenly that Bonnie might have been able to like those five crew members might have uh, actually might have found, had this like soft form and been getting formed within like Bonnie because like definitely after like watching the like these parts might have found Bonnie like Bonnie might have actually started like trying even with like the collective emotions of like and thoughts of like Bonnie's like fear towards like these pirates and well of like Bonnie's like uh, concerned about like and like as concerned about like Puma and basically about like Bonnie not like guys and like looking not of like and all this like basically like collectively Bonnie getting separated from Puma and everything like I'm like Bonnie not knowing if that Puma had survived or not like basically all this collectively like might have like Bonnie like tearing up like the moment like the pirates might have found Bonnie and Bonnie might have woke up like not might have investigated the non direction like just for security might have something like the pirates who might have already had like an empathetic side as well to them. That those pirates might have had like an empathetic side as well to them, like, and they might have felt bad for like Bonnie, even though Bonnie might have not revealed anything like so they think that they might have totally felt bad towards like Bonnie. Yeah, and basically might have decided like cheer up Bonnie, and that way like I'm certain like they might have decided to like make Bonnie a part their crew member, just like the finale that episode of the project. So definitely those pair who might have like only might have made like a big stop at that side and then like that way that's the meeting between like by sheer one person that's the meeting between like Tone and like, those pairs might have happened at the beginning of the research. So definitely once like that pairs left that island like and was like Bonnie, they might have taken Bonnie with them. It's definitely my correction. That way and that way like I'm like it might have been connected to like backstory with like Bonnie where like it might have been due to like Coma's like extreme self-love act which might have ended up as like the family itself of like Kimpoma ending up facing that absolute poor kind of like situation fuck even before it's like citizen uh uh extreme work situation even before it's like citizen which might have resulted in like which might have was been resulting in the situation where like Bonnie might have been only struggling for food to like to an extent and like and from that way like this like overeating habit of like burning which even remains even to like the person like might be connected and tied to that backstory of like burning supplement like burning might have in like burning backstory like burning might have born from that basically having like an abundance of like food while uh, while living in like the palace, while during like while lecturing to not was like raised by systems to like basically like after like the Scepter Dragon showing up initial entrance to like for the kingdom and like uh things going from like Bonnie like for the not getting as much like not being able to like eat as much as she generally wanted to like it going from like Bonnie totally struggling for food might have been like the situation with like Bonnie and this all might have collectively ended up causing that overeating habit of like Bonnie which is like very much alive even though the person might have been what might have happened to like a public that I'm about it kind of the research but like that way that it might have been this very exact like pirate remember might have taken Bonnie in like and making Bonnie part of the group. definitely it might have been definitely according to like the orders of like the captain who might have been like acting actually might have been like the one who might have felt that absolute of towards that Bonney more than anybody else that live on the streets. So like definitely also sort of like one of might have taken Bonney in as like a group number and usually and just like so Bonney might have quickly bonded with like in like crew members and like the crew members might have been like the captain and the crew members might have been like the initial teachers of like Bonney when it comes to like fighting skills and everything might have been like the case definitely not changed. And Bonney might have been such an athlete quick learner and like luckily like the captain might have noticed that definitely not a damage and eventually in one of like, the battles that Passport might have faced that and like the captain the Passport might have lost the captain might have been what might have happened definitely not the damage. So like Bonney Python might have been extremely smart and quick learner of like like the void of like back to them being in the front of like losing that cap like I'm just like in that battle situation like it might have been after losing that cap and might have been instantly like Bonney that might have taken that leadership role and might have it might have been only due to that like Bonney instantly like not breaking down and basically that only like taking jobs and like that leadership role like the coach might have managed to like escape safely the remaining crew members might have managed to like escape safely to second round. Might have been like the case. So like since then like the crew members might have been seen Bonney as like main captain might have been like the case that we went for represent. So like maybe it might have been during the escape back then that after losing the captain that like basically once like the crew members were like seeing might have been seeing like Bonney as their new captain like and like then Bonney might have like given the orders to crew members to like make this like fit stuff and like totally different island. And like they are like while Bonney and the crew members might have been watching like at that point I was like it might be from that island that like Bonney the like extreme overeating habit like might have totally found this like also in like the this like for it might have been put on that island might have been like it is and like Bonney might have had like absolutely no idea at all that that was like an episode might have been like it might be through such a manner like that like Bonney might have gained up like the power might have been like the base Stephanie might have been the that they one like born as well as like in Kuma might have escaped from that job at kingdom like everything on that way like the reward might have ended so on front like at that point like a new king might have been selected from like the system itself like it gives me among the system like a certain individual who might have been like totally the smartest like and actually that might have those to be like the new king. And like I'm saying, like the moment he might have taken the throne, I'm probably he might have straight away declared what could have happened as well, which might have been like all this like importance of like so affecting the whole being solely due to like the extreme grade of like extreme grade of like King Koma and like the second will be along the lines of the different like this new king might have straight away declared and like soon after like taking up the throne like he might have also straight away taken the decision to like to have like the sort of kingdom be alive to like the world might have been so might have happened. So definitely might consider decision that way like was the like the Soviet kingdom at might be totally alive to like the world and might be like that to people definitely might consider ambition right. That way like the first might have ambition to different like after like writing might have found Roma and might have taken pursued and like Roma like a different like Roma might have totally like carefully like basically revealed just like backstory to like Dragon and like at that point I'm looking for that definitely Roma might have had that absolute worry of like of like done plenty of like not knowing if that Bonnie is like safe or not. So definitely at that point I'm looking for that Dragon what Dragon might have totally given the brief detail to that cinema about like the revolutionary army might have been like the case this minimum created. Now back then might have not even been aware of like the existence of like the revolutionary army. Might have been also the case with the minimum like the revolutionary army back then might have been not as big as it is but like the person might have been as big or like as popular as that or might have had like the fame that it at the time might have been like a situation back then it's definitely trend. So like definitely that way Dragon might have given like a small preaching about like the revolutionary army to like Roma and like the goals of like the ultimate goal of the revolutionary army being to like bring down the self-reliance. So like at that point like Roma might have totally said absolutely this because like that make Roma might have totally felt that he's like that like time has like gotten Kuma. Maybe even if it's through great suffering, like still time has like got Kuma to like exactly where Kuma should be uh, to fight to like bring down like the stick self regarding to be along the lines like Kuma might have and like Dragon might have told Kuma that is the at that point that is the regardless of whether like I think that is like allied to like the world government or that each and every single kingdom out there will definitely eventually will be ending up sharing like the same fate as like sort of end up with the along the lines like what in my development at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking at like so like Dragon Maker told Kuma that they need to fight to bring down like the Silver Dragon and free all this like suffering kingdom like basically like the perfect kingdom that basically that way that definitely like Dragon's words might have totally thought about that absolute hope for like so my basically that way like the might have ended up straight away joining that revolutionary might have been what had happened. Secondly my very ambition. But with my very ambition as for like was my doubt was like a better point to like take so much interest in that Puma and basically to create like first they create number of words like that words all based on Puma might have been definitely Puma like toughness like Puma might have maturity might have had like even before getting turned into like a cyber might have had like an extremely tough and resilient body. Might have been like that with like just by natural itself might have been like that different definitely as well like while the Navy might have fought against like the Revolutionary Army in one of like, the battles in like the past like Kona was part of like the Revolutionary Army. That way to like the demonstration was at least Kona even before turning into like a cyber like company having that like extreme toughness and resilience and same like and like Kona might have been confident might have gotten confident or confident in like basically being able to like when that got attacked by like the Navy against like the Revolutionary Army might have taken in like about like Kona might have himself like told Dragon that he will like cover for them by take the ship. And that basically Kuma might have got caught on them because of it like extreme toughness that like he might be definitely able like to get by himself. Even with like even while like facing like a great number of like natives so might have been along the lines like of like the confidence that Kuma might have had like and to like let after escaping to like let meet up with like the revolutionary army might have been like the plan with that it's they might have made discipline and them. But like things might have not gone as they might have not like planned and usually that way that maybe that one of like the admiral might have might have been present on like the battlefield of like Navy at that point might have been a pretty especially not for them. So like at the point like it might have been while Kuma might have been single-handedly like allowing that dragon and like the revolutionary army to like escape and trying to talk Kuma might have been like allowing that dragon and like make it possible for like dragon and TC like escape like once like Kuma as well might have been able to like escape. This might be at that point that I'm thinking that scenario that is the admiral like basically making it like and might have happened at the human creation. That might be how that Kuma might have overcast might have been like the case that human creation. So definitely uh, at that point, I'm talking things that once like Roma might have been stuff and put in being like like things in kind of activity like I'm like without much delay like I'm something like it might have been like another native that might have like felt that like Roma might be used for like very and like might have like thought about Roma to like very so like might have taken a good study on like Roma might have been probably leaves when like might have been surprised and shocked and completely with like the same toughness and resilience of like Roma that like I'm looking for that to make us straight away like is that weapon make us straight away have like solution of like basically creating positive stuff that with like the exact model of like Puma basically end up on turning like Puma into like and by testing it out my first like experimenting on Puma and turning Puma into like a cyber might be along the lines of like where the weapons might have decided. So like at that point definitely end up turning Puma into like a cyber that one like weapons calculation might have like maybe double like the toughness or like almost double like the already existing like rate extreme toughness and precision that Puma might have already had might have been what might have happened certainly was very much. So like that way at that point I was from like at that point according to like weapons all of that all the charm against like Puma might have been dropped and might have Puma might have been turned into like a warlord based on that maybe weapons or us alone might have been like activated situations also like work together and with the so definitely my good impression is for like during this time like Kuma might have totally seen this end up situation as like a great opportunity for like Kuma uh, to basically study a lot about like the Navy and to like get all of the critical internal information that they like the Navy while serving as like a warmer and like if that are critical to be dedicated towards like dragon and like the revolutionary army members. This should be like greatly helping like the revolutionary army in their path and progress to achieve that ultimate goal to like make it towards and bring down like such a dragon. That definitely like the Navy is like obstacle like definitely getting all that crucial internal information from that Navy while being lacked by some like accident would be like great strategy might be along the lines like Puma might have felt and this might be how that Puma might have totally that. So any sort of resistance at all might have not have shown any sort of resistance at all while serving as like a warlord and basically having like weapon experiment on like Puma might have been what might have happened definitely might have been great about my preparation through Puma's like absolute sacrifice and like Puma might have been able to like help out like the revolutionary army way too many times in like the second half by secretly like also information the information that we need might have been like the accurate situation that we remembering. So like the even dragon might be totally might not only Himbiri might have felt like so extremely indebted to Puma as like Puma being that specific single revolutionary army member towards whom not only dragon but like the entirety of like the revolutionary army members are like are the most that indebted towards would be along the lines of like maybe all or like a majority of them might be revolutionary army members might be feeling even to the might be like the actual situation. This might be also the reason for like this definitely like uh, like basically Sabo like and like and Sabo and like about the revolutionary army members like going to the extent of like going all the way up to going all the way up to like Marijo to like save solely to like save Roma might be all due to this reason actually might be like especially my friends, not just due to their great bond that they might have had with like what a friendship that they might have had towards like Roma, but also that due to that absolute in-depth feeling that like the majority of the revolutionary army might have towards like Roma. Might be like the absolute situation, especially might be in the so the fluent difference is that like Kim Boma after like escaping from like so of the kingdom and eventually like while serving in like the revolutionary army she might have had this like shocking like realization through like most likely the news once like Bonney's like fireproof might have like Bonney might have ended up getting like a wonderful like at that point I was like Kuma might have been naturally might have been absolutely peace might have been like the case due to that realization that like just like got is like that certainty of like that realization that like it's like solving it's like and like when it's like the scenario that I'm looking at and yet like I'm looking like after like leaving after like that escape from like sort of kingdom might have been like the last time Bonnie and Uma might have actually seen each other face to face. That's what they might have been like the case, especially my friends. So like after that even to the person like even though both of them like both Bonnie and Uma might have so badly wanted to like meet each other like and even though Uma totally could like meet Bonnie like and the person like Uma might have definitely ensured to like to make it impossible for Bonnie to be able to like find Uma might have been like the case, but even after like even while Kuma was like serving as like a warlord, even after like Kuma might have uh, found out about like Bonnie being in like in the captain of like a fire so protect the world generation and everything like Kuma might have ensured to like to make it impossible for Bonnie to be able to like find Kuma because of like basically Kuma by then might have had a whole lot of like responsibilities on his like shoulder I mean, helping to the help, the great extent of help that Puma might have felt taken as like it's like absolute responsibility to definitely ensure to like be able to like do all that help for like the revolutionary army members to definitely that way achieve that ultimate goal of like bringing down like the like Puma might have seen that as like the top priority in like what's remaining of like Puma like even more that point might be along the lines that Puma might have been desperately struggling to like make himself believe might have been even though that might have not been the case, especially when the friend which get like I'm like it might have been due to that absolute fear of like Puma which Puma might have had after like shockingly finding out that like Bonnie is like alive and well and part of like the first generation. Like at that point, like this great fear might have been formed within like Kuma that basically if like Kuma ever meets Bonnie, then like the possibility of like that was meeting itself like basically resulting in like Kuma totally abandoning all of his like responsibilities and basically deciding to live once again live uh, uh, as like a family with like daughter Bonnie. Basically that if he meets Bonnie ever again, like Kuma would be might change have that change in his mind and might abandon all of his like responsibility and might like live as a family. If we live as a family with like Bonnie like that would be extremely such an absolute betrayal to like the revolutionary army and to like the ultimate goal of like bring down like Silver Dragon. Like even that goal won't be ending up becoming successful along the lines like Kuma might have felt and like Kuma might have felt like it would be too selfish for like Kuma to do that and like okay to just leave with like wanting to get along the lines and like Kuma might have been struggling to like make him struggling by telling himself and trying to make him continue might have been like the actually like the situation definitely might have been the reason. So like so it's like they could benefit for different acts. So at present like I'm it might have been so extremely long since like Tony and Kuma might have last talked to each other that like I'm saying like Bonnie like has the desperations to meet Roma at like her father Roma at present might be to that much of like an extreme intensity. Might due to all the reasons upon the menstruation might be like actual procedures in the menstruation. So the claimant then the suit probably for like including like the future ones like the perhaps will be that finally making it towards like Roma and the claimant to find that trying the feeling this for like Roma finding will be getting a lot of like major spotlight at that point of like the scenario that I'm going to because of like Frankie being like the only spot to remember that would like actually really relate to like the sufferings of that trauma due to and like definitely the details connecting to like the backstory of like Frankie after like Frankie that whole accident kind of like situation I think like Leslie and like Frankie rebuilding himself from like human to like a cyborg that the extreme suffering and pain that Frankie might have had to learn to go through while Frankie might have done that to himself like we that in like an in-depth manner, like in that as like a backstory, like trying to come from that way, like trying to get it made the spotlight after that way usually some kind of attention once like Bonnie as well as like trying would be usually finally making it towards like Bacon lab. At that point I was trying like along like started to cutting like to the Frankie as well as like Bonnie as well. That would be like the most enraged and like fuming like with me at like Bacon and like the things that Bacon have done and would be struggling to like contain themselves from that fighting where the concept is like taking because of like finally being able to like approximate to like to Puma so much the connecting to like the size of as well as like Bonnie most likely might have a like might have been after like Bonnie something finding out about like the size of transformation uh of like Puma that and like Bonnie might have really search for like all sorts of like details connections to like a human side of transformation and might have shockingly at that point like on finding out all that details somehow that she might have shockingly and painfully realizing the extreme suffering that like her father like Puma might have definitely have to like go through during that transformation. So like definitely since about the member friends and for different like the definitely right might have hopefully it was that all the way back from that 8 years back from that's the voice and might have been attacked with this agreement like the giant scar like Onigashima containing that the homes that he might be definitely belong to that Kaido's like long distant ancestor. Might have been like the words in the real system, but might have traveled from that Elbap all the way into like the region like Fortune Banner in lab back in like the virgin it might have been like the case the river spring. So like how Kaido in like the recent person had like this forcefully taken over like the role of Manu like in like this back then like in like the there might have been this like giant by the name Momonosuke in like the world century who might have traveled from who might have been a giant as well who might have traveled from like Elbap to like eventually settling at like Wano might have been like the Wano back then might have been like the name of the like so definitely that that way like I'm definitely usually even from Elbap like I'm different like maybe that just uh, the ancestor of Kairos and like the giant Momonosuke might have had like one between them. Might have not gotten kind of might have been like the case supplementary. So like I'm deciding maybe after like So a few years after that, Indian ancestors like moment they might have set off on to like journeys to like explore like the world like and might have ended up settling at like one of and started this like created this like kingdom and like started this like rule over like one of like he might have had to like amount of he might have had to like start the ranch without like one of that and might have been like a bare land their items might have been like the case in the kingdom. So like the giant ancestor moments they might have built uh, might have built like uh, the land of one of kingdom from the crush might have been like cities development and like so that way like and like like in like the ship in which like the giant ancestor moments they might have made it to like the original land of one of that when like the crew members of like Vijayana Mominos gets like shit might have been like around it like the Vijayana Mominos and white might have been like maybe like the initial inhabitant of like the original land of one of that excavation the respectively members until like eventually like the like and that way like the Posey clan might have been like the initial inhabitants of like the land of one of in all the way back like the working country might have been the case so until after like few years, like I'm looking like the Jan and stuff of that kind of who might be from like the Kotonou clan, like the Kotonou clan, like the Kotonou clan might have initially been from like Elbat might have been the case, so definitely that eventually after the 50 years, like the Jan and stuff of like kind of like the like who might have a lot of like thematic to like kind of and like who might have this like who might have been this Jan like massive like might have showed up to like this very same who might have also set up like might have ended up in this like very same land of one uh, back then and might have on saying like the land of Manor and was like kingdom that like the tenants at the moment they had with like you might have only wanted like take off totally take off like the role of the kingdom and like that way like the fight might have happened between that Momonosuke and like the and the stuff of like kind of and like Momonosuke might have been the like not Momonosuke might have to like flee like the kingdom and like that way like while and but like Momonosuke might have fled with like the soul with his like soul boat to find someone that will be like to get that external event to like find someone that will be stronger than like the hands of like Kaido to like bring down Kaido and help Momonosuke. Would be along the lines like the dynamic of Momonosuke might have set up a clear benefit of from like Banu and might have by your conscience might have running to like the giant and the Joy Boy. And it might have been like the giant and the Joy Boys help that like uh the giant and the Momonosuke might have defeated that kind of might have been like certainly not and that way the giant and Momonosuke getting back to second them and it kind of the giant and sort of like kind of might have been taken out and like that way like the cult of like Onigashima might have been kept exactly there as lack of warning to all the Kurosumi clan inhabitant who might have while during like Jan ancestor one like the Jan ancestor Momonosuke had to like escape and during like the Jan ancestor of like Kaido ruled during that time in between time like and between like the Kurosumi clan like he might have brought like the Kurosumi clan to like the land of one of the saints might have been like the next Kurosumi clan that way might have ended up also becoming inhabitants of like the land of so that ends up living it but like once like the uh, and definitely thought it might have been a war once like the giant ancestor Joy Boy had fought off against like the giant ancestor for like it might have been a war but like I'm something like I'm something like the giant and the Joy Boy might have like won that war and basically that way like might have helped Momonos get out and basically that way like the and the moment they might have gotten back to like rule over like uh or like the land of Mano, and like that way, like the Portuguese clan might have won that freedom, and that yet like the Portuguese clan, even though even after like the defeat of the giant and Cairo, like the Portuguese clan might have still remained while in hiding in like the locations around like the land of Mano might have been like definitely meant for them because like even the majority of like, the Portuguese clan as well as like the Portuguese clan, maybe even back then might have been like human normal based humans might have been like the case, especially not so like back then like in like the world century in like even though remember the like the Kosei clan as well as Extra clan might have originated from Black Elbaf. Still, even like the island of Elbaf back in the Korean might have not been like an island full of giants alone, but like there might have been like normal sized humans as well back in the Korean and like Elbaf. So like the majority might have been the majority of the Korean clans as well as like the clans might have been normal sized humans. Um, might have been like the human friend. So that league like the northern side humans uh, like the Kurosawa clan members might have in like the land, like the debate of like the clan, and just kind of might have been like the case. So like as like a warning to like the Kurosawa clan to like never attempt to attack like the Kobe clan ever again, like something like the uh, how of that one guys, that way might have been yep, and like the land of man and like that giant sword close to like giant skull of like one guys, might have been actually belong to like the Guyana of might be like the human frame. So definitely the tribe that basically like might have been seen as like the symbol of like happy toughness and resilience and strength. Might have been the case with human inspiration. Might be the reason for that all this woman in like the past like while talking to like like having like candles for like to appear as might on her head might be due to all this sort of human frame. Might be a symbol of pride for like the clan. Might be like the human frame. So the player would bring like during like the voice in the research like and bring like among like the Rotome clan like from Elback like some might have set off on all directions across like the world and like might have even coexisted with like a certain extent of like the Rotome clan might have head on a different direction and might have for a while might have coexisted with like fishmen like and in the voice the like and like maybe certain fishermen might have even settled at like on the surface as well and might have been living in like surface as well. Might have been also in the case supplement experiences. Both in like surface as well as in what might have been like the case supplement. They might have had that much like freedom back during like the witch century. Might have been also like before like Timo might have started most like rubble and everything. Of like villains and everything might have been like a case supplement kind of. So like that way that back then like and the different like fishermen as well as like the Kurosumi clan tribe members might have coexisted together back then. Certainly might be tradition. That way might have been that their offspring might have ended up becoming like fishermen with like horns might have been like really much tradition. That way like the present day descendant of like that fisherman Kurosumi clan crossing might have been might be like Dillinger from like the flamingos like henchmen Dillinger who is like fishermen and have horns as well as like Jack from like kind of like his virus like also having horns as well as like the him being revealed to be fishermen. Definitely won't be at all sheer point at all definitely my preference because like I'm definitely my preference that like them both might be like the among like the many others might be like the present day descendant of like the Kurosami clan and like Fishman Ross might be like that sort of situation like so like in the future like many others as well getting such crossing individual like of like the Kurosami clan as well as well as like the Fishman like getting revealed in next within future like scenario that I'm like and also the PM like in the case of like Kuma like Bonney revealing that Kuma being from like the special tribe like and different that tribe might have definitely been like the Kurosami tribe itself is definitely my favorite and this might be the reason for like Kuma always wearing uh, a hat. It might be definitely consciously Kuma like trying to like hiding homes which like Kuma might be definitely having as part of that him being from like the Kurosami tribe to like hide that because of like definitely in like the past like very only even having like the interview to like basically even experimented from kind of as well. Like it all connected to like the exceptional toughness that naturally like the mm, that the one contributors from like the Botanic land look like the home like the home might have naturally possessed this in my pyramid. So like the ability to create such itself with that level of toughness of like the Botanic land might have been the reason for like kind of back like such like in like punk has that like this uh, welcome experimenting on kind of actions to definitely my reactors. In like the Kurosami clan that in like the Kurosami tribe that it might be only all of them with like the home might be having might be inheriting that some functions of like the Kurosami clans like Europe, which might have been like that ancient ancestor giant kind of like the uh, might have been like the case the minimal range. To whom like the skull of an Asian might actually belong to the minimal range. So like the minimal range right now that is Jinbe at present might be aware of that basically to which special tribe like Puma belongs to. It being like the Protestant tribe might be like the case and like Jinbe might be like even aware of its supplementary due to like this like history of between like the fishermen of like the whole crossing between like the fishermen as well as like the Protestant tribe, which might have happened all the way back in like the world century. Stephanie might be like due to like this connection between like fishermen and like the Protestant tribe, which might exist like about different like gender might be at present might be when fully aware that like Puma behind this like the hat that Puma wears like that Puma is like hiding on might be like the case in like it's definitely might be very important. But you know, the influence definitely for like by the time that I didn't have looking over like I'm explaining that finally that was like definitely finding out like the full extent of that also the like villain things that like weapons might have done that like finally will be that image of like weapon at present that like finally have of like that of that brilliant scientist that and all that would be getting shattered at that point and definitely I'm like finally would be not of caring at all about like uh where from adopt from that point on like the scenario that I'm saying and definitely since like Frankie's like current modification of it like cyber form I think was like actually through like the intel and things that like Frankie has studied connecting to like weapon experiments like from like that uh island or like that location where like Frankie has I think that spent this like time during like the time to keep after like the war in Marine Corps like they did so that leads in like weapons like technologies like basically and brilliant involved in like the present like transform form of like type of form of like finding so different like after like by the time like will be over like under like finding just liking weapon and not caring about like anything other like that anymore. And definitely that setting in like a rebellious like from the happening where like finding would be undergoing just like a cyber form and basically like would be like still with like the knowledge so far with like weapon technology that like scientists might have uh, attained through this like current transformation of like cyber form combined with this Frankie's own ethic like I'm looking like and Frankie's like experience and knowledge that Frankie himself might have gained on his own after like using the like technology of that weapon for until that point and basically with like after like everything Frankie would have learned of like weapons like villains and everything like Frankie totally collectively totally forming his own like basically creative transform form of like an idea, which like I'm referring by the time like the score head group would be like setting up from like the side and that I'm referring like trying totally reconfiguring this like current transformation. Basically, even though it might have definitely been like the one itself that might have definitely created this like six satellite forms like I'm referring like trying by then like basically learning all the powers of all six of like certain like satellite forms and basically would be also by then like would be getting so close and would be having that absolute bond of friendship getting formed between like those six satellites of like well by then it's like the scenario that I'm doing with so like by the time like head island have to be over like I'm determining trying to segregating inspiration from all the like six satellite forms of like weapon we can figure trying to and trying to that way like changing himself up and like gain an absolute new transformation which like trying himself would be like building himself up into like the new transform form of like trying like that would definitely be stronger than like the present transform form of like trying it's like the scenario that I'm looking and like that transform form of like trying would be having like a lot of powers including like also including like a bunch of powers from like multiple of like those six satellite forms of like weapons like a few of like each of like the six satellite forms of like weapons like and like finally like that new cyber form would be six is like also like given the scenario that I'm the I'm surrendered. So like by the time the story so visiting out from that second island, after like after the over like I'm still like a totally different new transforms of mind is like what I'm looking for and surrender. To mention developing like that new transform cyber form of like trying to trying to what to be like a way more lean transform form, which would be that while maintaining like the current toughness of like the bulky form of like Frankie would be while staying in its like Indian form would be also having that things fear enhanced as well. If like the even along with like a wide array of like all sorts of new set of like powers that like power game that like trying to gain. It's definitely my interest. So like that is such a new linear transformation of like trying to happen by the I then have would go up with like in the scenario that I'm the bring also. So for the development and all the bringing this like more upgraded transformation like this like for thing trying to have by the time I have will be over like I'm trying to taking like the anti-gravity uh like technology of like the robot of like to like have like that put inspiration into like basically finding like stopping everyone like even Lilith as well as like all the fixed satellite as well as maybe even Clarifon maybe ended up maybe being like a witness at that point to like finally like finding brilliant on the different maybe that at that point these prevailed was like basically at present the like maybe like revealing about like the limitation of like the anti-gravity technology like of like the robot only being possible at like due to the air conditioning in like Eckert Island alone like and like frankly that limitation like and like frankly himself like by the time Eckert Island now will be over like by 55% that limitation and like probably his own brilliance like and like frankly figuring out like the solution to make that anti-gravity technology possible all throughout like the world of like the scenario that in that way in this like new fundamental like in this like new upgraded transform form of like frankly once it will be happening like it won't be just like lean up or like I'm also putting like frankly also incorporating like the ability to fly with like anti-gravity onto like that upgraded robotics form of that frankly cyber form of like frankly that would have been when the like after like Sandy and Lucy and like Robin on the front box to be trying that to eventually end up becoming like the next Sohan crew member to attain like the ability to like fly is like the scenario that I'm looking forward to like I'm on train. So for the not correction much like Frankie would be eventually transformed into like next ultimate side of bomb that I'm totally from that form of like Frankie most likely Frankie adding in the power to be able to like create hologram that lemon trend so like Frankie really regardless of where feels in like the world like being able to like create like extremely realistic looking hologram exactly like the ones in like Second Island. Like also like a possibility that I'm observing. So trying to totally take advantage of that power, adding in that power to create hologram with that conscious intent to like they use that as like the ultimate strategy to like trick like any future opponents that like trying to might face into like trick them with like the holograms into like that where them struggling to like figure out which is like the real triangle and like this is like the hologram. It's also like a possibility that I'm like trying to maybe like using this like brilliant like maybe adding in like the power to like create like a single hologram, but like to create like a great number of like hologram simultaneously at the same time. Like now that way like trying to only using creating himself a great army of himself as like a hologram and that way like making it a similar cut for like the opponent without like different levels of hardware to be able to like uh, detect like the real Frankie from like say and using also like Frankie using that as like Frankie uh, and to help the squad crew like to do just like in scenario that I'm developing and delivering. But the new information right now that like six like weapons have like six satellite form like I'm looking like the 466 at like the clouds at like the Head Island like basically the line and like the blue line with like the 066 numbers written on it might be definitely connected to like the six satellite form of like weapon as well as like the that uh like robot with like the cyber with like the wings that basically that like Lucy and like the other people hero members are like the wings bringing towards like Head Island, like and bring that to my like sidewalk that like the thing might be like kind of started like sidewalk which like remove might have just started like and this like weapon might have given that like after creating that Kuma like ultimate site that might be like the ultimate strongest version of like Kuma like public plus definitely not version and weapons might have been supposed to uh hand it off to like create within a specific deadline and hand it over to like the world government for like the for like for the most use might be like the minimum rendition. So definitely uh and then for like straight away whenever like receives like new cyber like according to that which is like and like will be straight away setting up like the next deadline for like the to create like the next upgrade of like cyber that should be like far superior stronger than like the last one. It might be like the case certainly when so like the orders of move might be passed down from the elders to the admirals and to like the low ranking maybe towards like it reaching the might have been like the case with minimum ambition. So that might be the case. So definitely I'm preferring like the Puma like cyber with like the wings that legit is like bringing towards like exit island might be like the last the previous one that like previous cyber that like weapon might have given to him and definitely like it might be time at present for like the next ultimate robot creation. So like item weapons at present might be in like busy cost of like creating that next period of like finishing like the final process of like that upgrade next version of like that ultimate robot, humanoid robot, or like some sort of like they call it cyber, even ways form of that humanoid robot to like give it to like the people government does it like for them to like take it back to like might be like the world government and they have to like might be like it is becoming uncertain or like might have already sent like the most latest like cyber to like already might have been like the case. So like the previous version might be like discarded straight away, started by and it might be that discarded like robot which like might have this each time like a robot might be getting discarded like it might be started by like it might be like returned back towards like exit island might have been like the case definitely not trained either that or like I'm whispering like it might have been in like the case of like this like you might like the robot with like doing alone like that one might have registered for like that robot like once like the use of like the word domain is over like for like they want to might have just like work into like how that kind of robot might be like because like that human like robot is like the way might be like its number might be actually 4 6 it's definitely might be the relation and like that 4 6 on like that blue line and like the 4 6 on like the clouds might be like that welcoming signboard which like weapon might have placed for like the term of like that of 6 like Puma like robot with like the link, which like weapon could be seen as like one of his like best creations, which can instantly like replace like all 6 satellite forms of like weapon by itself like it single-handedly could be able to like have not only replace but like might be able to do way more than like all the things the 6 satellite forms of like weapons can do combined might be like actually the PMS preemption. So, and this might be a plan as well. So that's only to like take out and get rid of that the 6 satellite forms of that weapon using this that once like the government that will be bringing this like positive to not like scar of what with like the things might be working that plan that we might be real. So that the minimum tension right now is for like the trying to be straight and most likely be like an actual trap setup, scheduled trap setup that according to like the future plan by Shaka as well as that they might have been like the minimum which can be communicated better. Might have been like the case of minimum training. So like then only looking for like the moment like dynamic as well as so like president like the team that will be entering into like the triangles like in like straight away. They're getting pushed into like an important kind of like situation within like that triangles building and basically straight away like if the triangles like that location like translating them to this like common lab location within and basically they are like I'm considering that Shaka will be most likely showing up. It's like it will be most likely Shaka to that like there is a scenario that I'm about to go over right now. I'm saying so that my books really things that we for like eventually towards the end of like except island half like I'm preparing for like a cool to like eventually to get like welcome and basically at that point definitely I'm preparing like Robin's like outfit is what I'm preparing like the unique parts of that Robin's like outfit is what I'm preparing more like just this product pro using to interrogate weapons. It's like the scenario that I'm preparing that. I'm preparing like this product pro getting a lot of like crucial information out of that. Doing that through that interrogating that product pro getting a lot of crucial information out of that weapon as well as like Bonney and preparing will be at that point that will be finding out that about like the actual location that came up. That gets it into my information that like the actual at present like the Kuma Kuma's actual location will be with like the on like Chamabaka Island. It's like Lehman Train. So like Liam is like for like upper like the whole Sabo and like Indonesia Island. Instead of like like the Revolutionary Army might out of the set Wagon and the Revolutionary Army might out of the set out uh to like the location of like Indonesia Island to like check out like what happened and basically so like they might have set up while like a few of like the revolutionary army members might have stayed behind to look after like Puma. So like that is Puma a person might be like that Sabo as a student might have been might be as person at like Kamapaka Island might be like the game definitely much great. So like the crucial information of that the crucial information that like the actual origin Puma is with like the revolutionary army that information I'm also covering that through the interrogation of that yeah, of that finding out this like scenario that I'm looking for. And as well I think for language for getting a lot of like social information out of like weapons. Yet like I'm looking for like weapons we will be having that fear that like the great number of questions that like the storage through the interrogation will be asking that one will be or leading to like the elders and maybe you know as well like maybe about whom like homosexuals maybe black weapon might be aware of. It's also like about independence. So like the lead weapon would be own operation set of that interrogation reaching that point that and for that weapon that lead managing to like still free himself in an unexpected scenario where for that during a brief moment where like the squad group would be having the flag like difference of opinion between themselves during the interrogation of the weapon the be like having struggle between like the select for themselves having like and only the struggle between them and then the friends while they will be all in this like the fighting state like and like where most likely managing to like free himself from like the power of like the out figuring out like the loophole and freeing himself simply freeing himself from to take advantage of that moment of fighting to like free himself from like the progression outfit of like the powers of like Robin and basically weapons, quickly managing to like get out of like the section island building and like basically most likely through like the spaceship that weapons might be having that on that weapons quickly managing to like escape from like section island. It's like it's not where I'm saying. So like at that point I'm just going like the squad so will be in like a split up state with like Luffy and team at that point like will be temporarily heading out for like some reason don't see this written and like the remaining squad crew members who will be in like the presence of like a weapon of like the trap weapon will be most likely in like the structure stage like the scenario that I'm saying. So like this that whole situation that eventually make it possible for like weapon to take advantage of and like be able to like make it like escape at that point out of like exit island uh before like him having to like resort reveal his name towards like so it's like the scenario that I'm looking for. So definitely even after like so definitely even after like that highlight half will be over like I'm saying like the underscore is almost likely not realizing or like finding out about like in Stephanie Burns range. It's like definitely my different reason why you know Stephanie for like the entirety of like, the score has to eventually ending up getting into that get captured and then inside of state by eventually it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I'm also like for the Caribou alone, like single-handedly ending up uh, getting playing that absolute MVP role and basically um, succeeding in like making it possible for like in like freeing like the stock group from their different kind of like situation, and that being how like sport had growth being able to like make them come back and the fight against that and that way. This like being just scenario that I'm looking over. So like that's a major spotlight and moment like getting into like and after like in scenario that I'm looking over for him. So that the movement frames right now that like the buildings in like Texas Island might be or fully instead of like walls like it might be naturally or filled with like top that you in the place of like walls it might be all a great number of top like that side by side might be like that's a different situation and like this like building totally having like walls filled with like top might be hidden like through like the hologram to make it appear as if like a normal building. Normally, it's like futuristic building, while like the buildings which might be naturally all the buildings in like an island might be like riddled with like all that craft or for like what might be like the case. The name of it is sort of like with like little sort of this might be the reason for like Luffy as well as like right now like Usopp and like like basically so they being able to like pass through walls might be due to like the most likely weapon already most likely monitoring everything that's like happening on like Eckerd Island and being well fully aware of like the forest force entrance to like Eckerd Island. So that it might have been a scenario where like weapon like consciously to like trap uh Luffy's team as well as like the team of like those of like those of like might have been while weapon Luffy's like monitoring like they might have been patiently waiting for like to trap like existing as well as like so things. So like back there like while Bonnie had turned changed like Luffy face like at that point like basically while Luffy was like standing close to that building like at that point like but that also felt like I'm the friend that where something might have literally remotely turned on that door close to like where Luffy was the old man Luffy was like standing, and that way Luffy might have been able to like pass through the door, might have been like the case, and it might be tall and white doors also. Might be like all this stuff might be tall and white doors also, might be like the case given version. That might be how like the illusion of like this passing through like the wall, which might be only holograms. In actuality, like Jinbe and like Chopper and Luffy might have actually passed through a white stealthy or might be like the difference might have been like the very same case in like Usopp's case as well. Like in like Usopp's case as well, be like the present like serpent looks like serpent that looks like Jinbe with like the wings might have been like the result of that experiment that well might have done all the way in that system pass on Jinbe lab, which might have certain like even the creation of that server. Like if you remember shows that it might have been that the Jinbe like certain lab, its age might have been like the exact age in like the system pass while Jinbe was at that exact age might have been when like the Navy might have captured Jinbe and like the weapons might have experimented on Jinbe, especially so definitely it might be the remission right now, exactly for like things to like and like the present situation with like the Jinbe stop of like the Jinbe look like certain but like understand that while the pro had to during that the eventual purpose of exit island like eventually Jinbe getting like even more like a bigger shock. Uh eventually when Jinbe like the original Jinbe would eventually not only running into finding out about like the Jinbe look like certain but like even more like a bigger shock for like Jinbe to see eventually like Jinbe White from along with like White from the show Exit Island like eventually running into like a serpent of like based on the model of like Fisher Tiger Jinbe hero. It's like in the scenario that I'm trying to like look like serpent eventually like showing up and they at that point I'm looking like Jinbe for Jinbe to be in such a situation where like Jinbe would be all alone by himself might also like want to split up from that group when trying to like escape and his need for previous situation where like it should be like Jinbe all the Jinbe all by himself and like this like the Fisher Tiger look like stuff like basically showing up in front of like Jinbe and basically like Jinbe having no other and like I'm looking like that Fisher Tiger look like something being excessively strong and that way like even though Jinbe will be doing this like absolute just to like avoid a fight that lead you to that extreme prospect like Jinbe has towards like the fight and hence like being extremely disturbing for like Jinbe. like the scenario that I'm Jinbe doing is like absolute maximum to like escape from like such a tiger suffering, but like still like it's not being possible. When like even though it will be painful and hard for like Jinbe still like Jinbe still putting himself together and basically having that ultimate battle against like the Fisher tiger suffering at that point is like use like Jinbe will be eventually for and defeating like the Fisher tiger suffering is like getting the scenario that a tutorial cannot the particular person like has like the storage pro like then that is storage pro only progressing even though as like with a great like still as they each group to the like progressing they try to deep into like deep into like access building like and like eventually like and each of like the dogs each of them storage pro that current rate extreme rate towards like the that like Bonney have like something that eventually will be happening within each and every single month of like for Hector because like once like they will be finding more and more about like the women's experience of like weapon and how it affected how it caused like so much of like suffering and destroyed like the lives of like so many innocent individuals. There's like the end of scenario that I'm also delivering an inspiration. So I'm going to bring for like usually for Hector for Hector to like the facing off against like the side of version of like resurrection definitely not fantastic because like I was well was like uh, had been like captured by the Navy and was like completely like the experience of that weapon back in like one that definitely I'm different that as kind of version of like certain as well. Definitely I'm looking like it's for to fighting on during that journey deep into the like the scenario that I'm putting in French. So that definitely my secondary impression right now as for like the number one the definitely Shaka and so I think at present might be Ivanko in disguise. It's definitely not Remy and it's maybe very for like the number one weapon right now communicating and speaking to that dragon for people. It's definitely not Remy. Might be definitely Ivanko since like Ivanko has like transformation powers like different like might be definitely Ivanko who might have steadily infiltrated to exit island after like steadily infiltrating to that exit island like and like it might have been Shaka that like Ivanko that at step might have taken out and might have either put Shaka into like asylum or like any kind of state or like might have taken out Shaka and might have like probably put on like the that outfit and like might have like probably like taken the exact form even though using even those thoughts might have taken the exact form of like Shaka transformation powers like might have taken the exact form of like Shaka and with the outfit and everything. Might have been what kind of happened. Certainly not very like yet like I'm different like event though might be extremely stressed out presently and might be because of like even though probably might be aware of like basically the first lack of journey so far as part of like the revolutionary army from everything even though might have learned so far about like the navy and like about like a something like something from that it might be like even though they most likely having that strong feeling that like even like the point of operation at present between like even though and dragon that all of that might be that's the possibility of like software where totally might be tapping into that call and like or hearing that conversation and that it being obvious for like that like it's that like an infiltrator in like about like when post like information and everything and like even though you might be having that fear of like the possibility of like definitely even though might be aware that like they're having about like weapon having that 5 years ahead features with technology. So like I believe the infiltration of like the bento most likely already like getting noted by weapon yeah like weapon totally like messing with like Ivanko by remaining silent to like eventually like put Ivanko into that ultimate stealth interact with Galen Grants like Ivanko at person might be getting having that strong feelings definitely manipulated because of like Exile Island being like the base of like weapons definitely manipulated. So like this might be the reason for like just as well as like even though at present might be well and fully aware of like the incoming shift of like the seat environmental along with like uh along with this like my like ultimate person to like Red Island like about this as well like and with the different like even though might be well and fully aware definitely might be impression. So this might be like the helpful reason for like yeah like even though at present might be totally unaware about like the prophet like integration to affected island might be like the case that we went through. So like the lack of awareness of like this prophet presence at like affected island as well as like the awareness about like the incoming shift of like a of members along with like the powerful Kuma like serpent as well as like uh, the fact that like welcome is like that's the demon with primarily ahead of like that's technology. These four factors might be collectively the reason for like event so at present most likely being feeling deep down feeling like extremely nervous and stressed out and like actually feeling as if like that like Blanco might not like be able to like make which like return back to like the revolutionary farming after like this generation. By the end of the line, like Blanco would be definitely instead of Blanco feeling such a way might be due to all these collective factors might be like against minimum tradition. So the minimum tradition for like how exactly Blanco might have even found out like the location of like Captain Island, like the place of called the mechanism that Captain Island is like the base of like where from like luckily Captain Island might be at like such a specific location in like the world, which might not at all be able, which might not at all be easily findable. Might be like the case with minimum differentiate might have been only or like sheer coincidence alone that like the spot actually might have ended up at like exit headed might have been like the accelerating between like to that and so definitely yeah like the same exit island might have been not that extremely far away even though far away not that extremely far away from like the locations that you live there might have been also the case that living friend so definitely what might have happened might have been like after like Sabo when like during like the whole conversation with like the revolutionary army with like Sabo suddenly the whole setting and definitely at that point like Dragon might have definitely been Dragon and like the revolutionary army members might have been definitely worried as for like why for the support and like basically they might have decided to like set up to like Lucia to like bring Sabo back. But like I'm thinking like by they might have even bottom like only a bit close towards like Lucia itself. Like they might have not even been able to like actually get seriously close at all to like Lucia due to like the most like perception of like Lucia might have creating all those like secrets and everything like I'm looking uh, it might have been like by the time that the Revolutionary Army ship along with like the Revolutionary Army members might have been even getting closer towards like India itself like at that point and from the different like the navigators in their ship might have told Dragon that like it's like too dangerous for them to like even proceed even not even a bit of the rocket in the direction of Lucia kingdom due to like all the uh, due to like all the feedback due to all the tsunamis affect might have been like the situation definitely going to so definitely might have been like and like definitely at that point like Dragon and like the revolutionary army members might have been even more worried about like what might have happened to like Sabu at like Lucia might be from the lines like Dragon might have like they might have all been worried so like at that point I'm also trying like by sheer point of like I'm looking like they might have like noticed like just like what appears as if like a ship at like the far end like the horizon might have been like the case that we went for ambition so at that point itself on the different like using like the minus like using the binocular like thing like like they might have uh, found out that it was like in fact like an aviation. From that time like the dragon who might have been so simply worried about like this like uncertainty conflict like Sabo might have also felt like the strong possibility of like basically the phone conversation of like between like Sabo and like the revolutionary army members but the concept of like might like that phone conversation might have been snapped by like the Navy. Like basically that might be Dragon after like the content of that Dragon might have eventually ended up feeling strongly that that basically such a thing might have happened as supplement. So like that might have resulted in like Dragon as well lag totally deciding to lag. That like the Navy's phone conversation as well that becomes finished. So let's say that Dragon might have quickly Dragon and like, the revolutionary army members might have quickly work together and might have gotten themselves this like device to like tap the phone conversation through remote distance the female preemption. So yeah, like they might have by the time like they might have got a hold of device like they might have not been able to like tap any maybe phone conversation. Yeah, like they might have had that device on the ship while setting off to like to Lucia to find out the truth about like Sabo situation themselves. So like that way like while getting even close to like Lucia and like spotting the like maybe vessel and like almost like on like the horizon like area like I'm looking like Dragon might have probably used that like might have probably used that device and might have that way like it might have been exactly like by certain point from like by using that device like it might have been exactly at the point where like Akainu might have formed the secret of members that might have been like the case of human presentation. So definitely at that point, like it might have been specific that might have been like talking to uh again might have been like the case. So like again might have like due to like definitely like weapons like Extra Island might have been extremely might be a tech location that might be extremely hard to find like find like definitely Admiral Akainu since like he's as like the Admiral responsible extremely responsible for the like he might have once again called like he might have already given like the location coordinates uh to like the secret bureau members even before like they might have set up the like Extra Island. Yet like Akainu might have once again with like responsible with all of this like responsibility like Akainu might have decided to like once again call like the secret bureau members and once again like we tell them about like the location for the net in case like if they might have not the town or like might have forgot might be along the lines like again it might have had that like feeling so like we able to bring like again it might have once again for like the people who remember exactly which are going around like that exact time and to once again tell them about like the remind them about like the exact location coordinates might have been like the new month celebration. So that we at that point I was trying through that point having like dragon and like group might have like totally uh co-authored this like conversation between Akai and legacy to the members and like sadly like I'm different like they might have straight away dragon might have straight away came to the conclusion that these reasons like where from the like the next extremely crucial and more figure to like the go down when like back through like an interrogation of like they might get close as to like what might have happened to that Sabo. And since it might have been a situation where like the Revolutionary Army might have not at all been able to like stay to the weather conditions, might have been not at all able to like even get any uh, close up toward like in the direction of like the Lucian of like Island, like and like they might have straight away decided to like set off towards like Island and basically as soon as possible like interrogate like weapons and basically find out the truth of like the situation of like Sabo might have been like the decision of like dragon. So like that point of the dragon might have straight away given like orders to that like revolutionary army member who can shape shift into like the bird as well as like Lenzo to like totally head off straight away like before like the people there member like make it to like exit island for them both to like uh use the exact use that device that through which like the location coordinates can be tracked down. So, like basically for them to take that device and basically for them both like Bento as well as like that uh, revolutionary army member who can fly like for them to like head off to the exit island and for like even go to like make that steady integration and basically make it towards like welcome as soon as possible and like interrogate and find out like the crucial information about like Sabu uh, through such an information. So like that way Dragon might have assigned this like mission to that demand code. Might have been what might have happened certainly not privilege. So like that way that revolutionary army member who can transform into like a bird like composite like in as well as like even though using event host powers like even though might have transform and made event to like an extremely young version of that event might have been like the minimum privilege. And that way like that uh, bird member affect the revolutionary army member might have carried and been able to like carry and go and like they might have close and set off with like that location coordinates that while ensuring to like not falling to like the site of like the navy vessel of like the PCG member and like stealthily that way that or taking them to a totally different pathway and like making that way, making it to it like tested either before like the people members might have been what might happen is certainly not the generation. So definitely like even though right now in like the guys of like Shaka might be totally on the mission to like make it towards like weapon and to like interrogate weapon while being totally unaware of like the current use person. Might be that the case at present definitely mentioned. So definitely and for the product also pretty most likely for like that definitely obviously like Kraken might have want to then to as for like the security most likely the security and surveillance are like extra diamond being extremely tight. So like basically Kraken might have maybe even so like that you know reality level can transform into like word to not be part of like the infiltration to like just drop event of like the shorelines of that island and basically for him to that get back to that revolutionary army ship. Might be along the lines that what Dragon might have told and might have been like the remember it. And Dragon might have like reassured like went out that basically to not worry and basically to totally only focus on like basically like infiltration and getting towards like weapon as soon as possible. And even if like the people the wrong members like even though not able to like uh, interrogate and escape from like Edward Island before like the arrival of like the people the wrong members like even though not have to worry because like the revolutionary army is would be failing like the people the wrong members even though from a great distance like they will be still failing like the ship of like navy of the left like people the wrong members and would be like eventually making it up like to the members uh to like a headline and like the all event both has to do is like survive and defend the PLM the lines like and like and might have that is that would just like a ratio of event even though even though might have been feeling absolutely stressed out might have been like pretty definitely might have been very impression and at the end of like definitely Dragon might have thought use such a strategy because of like the belief weapon being such an absolute genius with like 500 years ahead of like technologies and because of this reason like stealth might have been like the best option that like Dragon might have seen like basically Dragon might be aware of like even though of that definitely Dragon might have totally been something like that it might be totally splitting for there to be a lot of substance at like second and everything so definitely like the chances of like making it to weapon before like weapon might even escape might be like the best chance to be able to like make it to weapon and interrogate weapon would be solely through like an event of infiltration. Stealthy infiltration might be along the lines like Dragon might have felt is definitely not good. So like this might be what's going on in like the person and like how it might be event of that's like in like the state of like Shaka that we might be the right now. The even traditional writers definitely for like even though without much great delay that making it to like the room of like weapon and I'm also bring like event of so at that point, we stood out on seeing like a punk, like sitting right on a chair, like right in front of that event while like punk will be sitting and working as if like he has not, he's not aware of that event. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like that way, event so that have to step to be like slowly walking like uh, towards like the real weapon and has like event to be about to totally threaten weapon with like weapon to begin with like information like the right and that will last second down the like event goes straight away getting put into like an kind of like event goes getting dragged away and getting put into like an kind of like situation by the powerful serpent it should be like the personal serpent of like cell phone at like set who might be which might be already for that like weapons with like the finale and like basically went straight away getting offered by that traffic and like him stating the medical condition for like that some actual name might have meaning Stella. That name Stella that like made it accidentally said like might be like naturally might be like the original name of that the actual origin weapon might be like the military invention. So and the original weapon might be actually for the especially military invention. So like at that point like I'm sitting like the original weapon like turning around on from chair and basically at that point like definitely I'm praying for like Stella the version where comes to like definitely have like a lab a unique kind of like lab like Gecko Moria like crocodile and other villains like I'm different that definitely for like the weapon as well to like definitely most likely have a unique kind of like lab and like lab in that lab at like the trap kind of like event was like scenario that I'm looking for. So like event for at that point only feeling as if like it's like game over or like event and that event definitely won't be like survive. But like I'm looking like it would be I would love second like I'm looking like Lucy most likely while being in this like trap kind of like state like I'm looking like would be getting so extremely straighter and maybe like Lucy that probably would be like taking out that frustration by like taking out a certain extent of his like superpowers and basically like punching at like the building and like creating great extent of like an internal force damage to like the building of like except island like of like the except building is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So that totally that whole question like that so the weapon will be having at that point would like Luffy alone like ending up with like the Stella weapon and deciding to like postpone like the take out of that event and basically to totally because the lab weapon at that point will be feeling extremely enraged with like using like the damage done by Luffy and like and that need like the solidity of that destruction getting formed within like the stellar weapon solidity that Luffy like and from that how like totally forgetting about like event or like postponing like the whole take out of like Fremantle and basically focusing on basically teaching music and lesson. Just like the scenario that I'm looking at. And that for decision, that single decision of like the lab weapon that totally eventually spiraling into that basically Lucy and the format road eventually ending up all the making all the way making it all the way towards like the main room of like the stellar weapon and basically the fight happening and like at that point in that fight like I'm so different the scenario to be like the was probably having to like face off that uh as for army of like powerful stuff from this like the scenario that I'm like maybe including like different tiger as well as like Jinbe serpent as well as like Kaido serpent so like about to do that and it's like the person that I'm and like just wanted to struggling their way to that or for indicating um those serpent and like as like and like the big most likely screen event is like the synapse that was different. So like the interrogation of that weapon happening at that point is like the synapse that was different. While the interrogation of that weapon would be happening, it would be so different than not being able to like extract out like the information like the actual information connected to like Sabo's like missing connected to that emo like the definitely on the different like the scenario to be most likely that weapon most likely will be doing her absolute best to that prevent herself from like revealing the name of like or like things or information comes like but like I'm like eventually maybe like where was that I'm doing the interrogation reaching the point where like I'm looking like weapon both the weapons being forced to like have feeling as technocrats she has no other choice but to like reveal like the name of like the move but like at that very last second is when I'm bring off like by sheer point. Then at that point by sheer point was like Lucy showing up and like straight away attacking Lucy like the scenario that I'm looking at. So definitely the about Lucy versus like Lucy the bad happening Professor Man like the scenario that I'm looking at as well as like Chaco as well as like Lucy all of them like chopping it and I'm looking like definitely the battle getting ensured as well along with like them like the Puma like ultimate robot with like the wings as well to be like fighting and like the fight probably beginning at that point is like the scenario that I'm playing but for fight situation in which like the straw hat group would be the entire straw hat group would be only having their hands full and would be struggling uh, against like against like the human like ultimate robot with like the scenario that I'm talking about and like Luffy having like in this battle against like the is like the scenario in like Luffy can gear 5 even though initially in like Luffy's not performance still really like Luffy's definitely being forced to like definitely have a probability power by now at present might have probability after like if like defeat by against like Luffy might have been sustained the perspective that he might have trained and sharpened and honed his skill to that such extreme levels that like at present like putting the skill like Rob like hardly alone that would be like fiercely powerful but like also Rob might have at present might have reached like the point of like definitely having like awakening like to like levels of power of like the leopard of like the scenarios that I'm looking at. That way like the name for like even though initially Luffy will be doing like absolute best to like not bring out his like gear five powers like I'm looking like Luffy usually ending up being forced to like rely on his like gear five powers for Luffy to even be able to like defeat Rob Luigi. This is like the scenario that I'm thinking about it. Right? So like while this intense fight will be taking place, I'm thinking something like the Straw Hat Pro, like the remaining of the Straw Hat Pro, I'm thinking something like would be like while this fight will be beginning itself, like I'm looking like it's all them all being in like an extremely struggling kind of situation. And so at that point, self track and like weapons simply taking advantage of that situation to like definitely the urban weapons taking advantage of that situation to like definitely escape from like from Texas Island is like within our that that way like even at that point like I'm different like definitely poor events go as well as like Lucy and the Sohek group at that point would be also shocked that like basically once like group event go like they would be finding out about like Starbucks like missing situation that yet like none of them will be able to like get like that social information as for like the present situation of like Starbucks and I'm sitting in my book ambition that like or like even the name like kind of like definitely then the way of managing to like from like Red Island without revealing like his name to the squad to or like event or like an arc that I'm like at that point I'm talking like event during the green position that event come from the brain would be so desperate to like find out about like Sabo while at the same time like I'm bring like Bonney would be extremely desperate to like find out about like Kuma and like definitely I'm bring like as like event will be able to like have weapon about like Sabo like at that point so come the ring Bonney totally pushing carelessly like insensitive manner like totally pushing when took away and like basically like asking like weapons about like Pumas like person were about that. At that point, the Thomas like event of like shouting out or like screaming out like uh, in an enraged manner to like Bonnie that like Puma is like with them at like come out of the island. So like the scenario that I'm looking at point. Yet like I'm looking like Bonnie still pushing like event of the way because of like Bonnie's like extreme craze and frustration towards like weapon. And by then like it would just be Bonnie alone, but like the majority of like the almost like the entire project group, especially like but like the ones that will be like the most angry with like weapon. Even more than Jinbe and Jinbe definitely. Bonnie as well as trying to use like within that element. So like them taking out their rage at like weapon and maybe attacking weapon it's also like about into that and preparation. And like definitely that way, like a lot of time getting lost. And that way, like once like Luchi and Luchi and team will be showing up, like and like fight will be beginning, like definitely like that way, like at that point, like Weapon managing to like escape. And like that way, solely due to that time scrolling kind of like a scenario which might be actually happening like due to like the forehead rules like race and everything like resulting in like them not being able to like find out anything connected to like Sabo's like missing situation is like the scenario that I'm about to bring about three. So like at that point like I'm probably preparing for like scenario to be like Luffy being in this like intense like one was one fight against like Rob Luffy and like even though Kaku would be like offering help to like Rob Luigi, like an extremely enraged like Rob Luigi who was staring at like Kaku to like and like that fair self like will be like Rob Luigi telling Kaku to like stay uh, away as far as away from like Rob Luigi's fight because like of it being like being like even at that point it would be totally personal for like Rob Luigi to like settle this like cost with like leaving for like motorcycle. It's like the scenario that I'm going to right. So definitely and Stussy as well and can do different like fighting in an extremely cutting manner. And like along with like Takuma, like a robot and like Kaku, like the remaining of it is to hope that seriously having a hard time like and that as well as like all the remaining seraphim robots at like weapons like place like I'm different like will be better in that fight. So, like the scenario that I'm so the never spend like eventually like the prophet group ending up in like a crucial and critical kind of like a situation. And where like Luffy will be totally ending up being worried due to that and the prophet crew members like really getting into like an extremely critical kind of like awkward situation. Uh, and in like a correct kind of like situations like scenario that I'm saying, and I'm referring not like me being at that point that I'm looking like in that critical situations when I'm looking like dragon and like the and like the revolutionary army members that will be showing up. So that definitely I was doing like a single remote kind of like attack from like dragon landing, which would be saving and freeing like the freeing like the crew members from like that critical kind of like situation against like against like the extremely outnumbered army of like like the scenario that under the and that way like basically and that way like I'm so preparing for the true like the revolutionary army members like enters like I'm putting like the tide of like the battle which at that point until that point might have been eventually ending up against like for like the like once again like the entrance of like dragon and the revolutionary army like the tide of that eventually will be changing and basically that way with like dragon's help like I'm looking for like dragon as well as like the Emperor like not at all looking at each other and would be only focused in like the battle. At that point it's like the scenario that I'm looking for different. So like once like they were struggling their way to like offering and defeating all of them and basically once like the battle will be over like I'm looking like at that point is when I'm looking for like definitely like an extremely awkward moment between like uh of like a meeting between like Luffy and Dragon happening right in front of like the entirety of like this prophet crew and event though is like and like the revolutionary army is like eventual scenario that I'm looking for this and my good ambition. I'm totally predicting that conversation between like Luffy and Dragon to be extremely awkward. Like I'm looking like the so had so much like seen and never before seen side of that Luffy during that Luffy's interaction with Black Dragon. It's like the scenarios that I'm basically I'm totally but maybe that Luffy maybe even getting to a certain extent like anxious while talking it to Dragon. It's also like about Luffy that I'm basically and Dragon as well at the same time like even Go and like the revolutionary army members like seeing that never before side seen side of that Dragon or like really seeing that Dragon as well anxious due to that Dragon feeling that absolute guilt of that basically of God, Dragon will be strongly at that point feeling for like a black necklace on like Luffy. It's like the scenarios that I'm listening to the right and the reaction. As I told you, that by the time that battle at like Action Island would be finally feeling over like and by then like the entirety of like all the buildings and of all the technology at like Action Island like all of that would be that completely destroyed. Is that the entirety of that sector and like all the buildings in it that will be probably destroyed and would be in that crap kind of like situation. Everything would be like the entirety of the building and everything would be ending up into like a scrap kind of like situation. Or throughout textile and it's like the scenario that I'm looking at. They also study the mechanism for that weapons plant that need most likely being to eventually replace like the six satellite form of that weapon once that the Shuma like ultimate robot with like the ring was equal to zero once like the zero number brings it to that exit island that definitely weapon plant might be inactive to like use it to like take out that music satellite of like weapon and for like weapon to have only that single Kuma like circle to like take care of that for the long so far done by like with this six satellite it also like the scenario that I'm visible with. So this so different maybe in the coming in as like a such an approach of surprise for like the six satellite form of like a so it's like the scenario that I'm visible and that like one by the time like the fight will be over like I'm just fun that um, and I'm like I'm only finding out what like variant is like the scenario that I'm looking at. Like I'm clearly finding out once like when that fight will be over like when that thing of that and island and when my return being in like destroyed kind of being destroyed kind of state. So like at that point I'm like the six satellite like will be deciding to like build the like weapon by then would have a skill like from like and like, like the six satellite forms of like weapons that absolute bond of friendship getting sponsored in like the six satellite forms of like weapons as well as like the strong focus like the scenario that I'm doing. And most likely I'm whispering like that to them so might have more taken out Shaka but like most likely might have uh put Shaka into like a title state and set up Shaka somewhere in like a nearby or something close to I'd like Second Island might be like a supplement to it. So like Chaka being created and basically like there are absolute one of them being forms between them on like six satellite relating the top and everything. It's like it's an art that I'm right. So like from that point on like I'm saying like the six satellite the Second Island belong to like the six satellite forms of like the alone. Just like the scenario that I'm and then like rebuilding like Second Island exactly according to like their ideas rather than like weapon, the origin weapons ideas, like the scenario at that point. Like that way, like just satellite forms of like the weapons at that point, getting their absolute full freedom to build up Treasure Island exactly like say would be wanting with that absolute freedom. Like any good scenario that I'm just only quick. Yes, in that thing, like the everything is like suppose Jinbe, whose name he might be a woman, where the name is still like one. So the confirm have like the she might not have been the person or because like but like she might take so much pride in his intelligence that basically like eating relying on like the power of like so this is something that she might have like aiming for to have brilliance might be the lines of that setting has to be the same or concept that she might have had so then by setting up while in like the simple like while the weapons that might have decided to set up of that base of that might have you know like the concept of that Eckert island like at that point I was looking at seen it hospital to that set that on an island that would be really hard to spot that especially from like a weapon due to like weapon aliens different relate as well as like weapons being like such a central figure in like the figure of like the name like the police the see like the book like weapon getting targeted by all sorts of like people fire as well as like all sorts of that or people might have been all sorts of enemies like that I might be extremely hard to find that even if even then that might have also considered just because within our real still any like pirate powerful strong pirate or like any enemies like any other enemies even either by sheer accident or like by some other way that the worst case scenario that them finding and making that make a right and that as well like definitely the made us consider so like in such a scenario that lead to bring down such like powerful like enemies like continuous strategy that was made up for them might have been to that might have been like the strategy of like stopping hallucination with any intruders to that sector. So it's for them to see the impossible for them to that be able to understand what's real and what's not. And that way, by confusing them, by surrounding them in that desert island with like all sorts of like holograms, as well as like simultaneously combining all the holograms with like real things as well. In the desert island, so that they and like exchanging between them, like to surround like the introduction by the same between these two things while surrounding them, and that way to like put them into like such an extremely confused like kind of like a trance like kind of education dialogue. And they would like so they could actually extremely understand what here. It's impossible to tell what's like real and what's not. So like in such an extremely confused and unguarded state for weapons to like strike using like better points like surface and that way to like take out any sort of like formidable or like powerful enemies anything one of that might show up at an exit island to like capture or to like take out the might be along the lines of like the like strategies that they encountered that they might have formed before even creating exit island might have been like create mega frame. So like certainly in like the case of like the flying giant they in like a island like and then the reason for that giant whale might definitely not be a all of them, but like definitely an actual robot, certainly not a machine, a flying robot, and it might be solely through that like anti-gravity technology that like latest just now mentioned like that would be that anti-gravity technology that giant robotic whale being clearly like float around in that echo island might be two such I mean, especially my attention. But in the case of like the giant surrounding as well as but in the case of like the giant robot as well as like the giant dragon that fighting each other at like in like the middle of like at that island like so different in that in that case like it might have been such a scenario where like there might be like something like that might be like the holograms of like to like giant robot as well as like the giant dragon as well as like the also like an actual robotic version of like that exact the first size of like this exact hologram that's currently like exact two robotic versions of as well of this of the giant robot as well as the giant dragon as well might be like the case in university. So like these two robots might be like hiding at beneath like the surface of like exercise and so different that beneath like the surface level of like exercise like they have to be like an extreme underground like lab as well as like an underground like huge space where like all sorts of other exercises like might be taking place and like it would be in that in those like huge underground facility beneath like exercise that like these giant robots might be actual robot might be staged like the giant dragon robot as well as like the giant robot as well. Might be like a case that you know the break. So like in between at like different intervals like in between like either one of these robots or like both these robots might be like so to like the system while simultaneously like the hologram might be like steadily getting fit up. And basically, at that point, like basically thinking that the holograms of that the giant monster, giant dragon, as well as the giant robot that will be fighting each other. But like at that point, like it will be like the it will be like the giant robot themselves like in us. And not all of them that will be fighting at that point. Certainly might be the good the new incident which is and this might be the reason for lack earlier lack at that even telling like the store actually that basically that like they could do just decide that the actually like what's there and what's not. Like basically maybe most likely the scenario where like not themselves like most likely maybe be in charge of like basically like interchanging like most likely maybe think about while like from like the server. from like the ground, like these two like gates would be opening, and basically these two robots would be from the ground would be appearing, uh, elevated and appearing to the surface and would be starting their actual robotic bike. Uh, and at that point, like the holograms like totally turned off. Like basically either I'm delivering this happening in like an automatic setup, like timer like manner, or like I'm delivering like it will be adjust that might be chance. So like this might be how that they will need the very same channel right at that that like Lucy wasn't able to like, adapt with that it being a hologram that basically this very same channel right at that basically at the same time that actually attacking and like that exactly landing on that giant dragon might be due to that all the like collective reason might be like that the biggest situation that Miller so this is the matter that for like the printing in land like that island like it will be definitely full of that place of walls or like the building that will be full of like giant doors, giant stealthy doors which will be created by like the hologram, which might be with like the hologram is that they given a like appearance of like walls while instead of walls like that the entire surrounding of the building or like exit island might be like of each building all throughout like exit island might be or like huge door and like perfectly designed as like that absolute trap for like any intruder that basically kills that person to totally get tricked into that thing that basically that the building is like a hologram and that way that's being able to like talk through like the what that will be like then would be most likely passing through like metallic giant metallic still thought might feel like that should that is the case and that way getting trapped might do like that with the paper operational speculative and information. So like at first I'm thinking about this might be like the situation with like use of like as well as pick up and throw as well as like matrix and throw that they use them both like passing through the ball and like it's oxygen knocking and like it's so instantly after passing and yeah, being able to like totally feel the robot is exactly to like that trap to set and like then thing traps and shut inside like that and the locking was instantly like when being trapped and shut inside like we like the actual like situation like the action and the feeling of it. So that and the friends and the other thing as to like how exactly is that stealthy replacement of that hologram looking like robots in the case of like the giant dragon as well as like the giant robot like so the thing it might be exactly while during the fight between like the giant dragon and like the giant robot like don't like either the robot attacks like the dragon to like the point of like the dragon collapsing and falling to that the ground or like it would be like the point where like the dragon, the giant dragon would get like in fact the giant robot and the giant robot would be falling to the ground. At that point is when I was wondering like the that was like the quick replacement of like the hologram robot or like dragon with like the actual robot or target will be happening from like that ground surface level. Quickly opening up and like the replacement quickly and like that way like the robot or dragon that will be getting up from that fallen state if you land no fallen apartment actually but in such 13 minutes in this point that was like where one might understand this like hologram to that robot and the robot to that hologram shift to the shift might be like that the two situations like about the that and the thing for the another thing.